going to miss our joke, but that's okay. All right. So this week, this whole week, even on the block, we're talking about repetition. And so let's start off our class today just talking about loops. I realized I didn't teach you guys on Monday, but you still had your readings and saw examples of how to do loops in code. So let's just talk about that for a little bit. How are you guys feeling about the basic concepts of repetition in programming? Sweet. I see a lot of like, yeah, man, it's good. Well, sweet. I'm glad. Are there any questions about anything that you guys have seen up to this point? Okay, well then, a lot of what we talk about today with our small group might be review for you, and that is just fine. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Brother Birch, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
So during while I was studying a little bit about like these loops, sometimes there's brackets and sometimes there's parentheses. What's the difference between the two?
Let's see. I'd have to see an example. Do you have an example by chance? It kind of depends on what you're looking at.
I might add the loop. I don't have one right now, no. But pretty much like, I guess I could tell you one that I have on my notebook, because it said like for name in bracket, Christopher, comma, Susan bracket, colon, then it says like print, parenthesis, index or whatever it was, or name. Yeah, what's the difference between those two, and when would I use them?
So the parentheses in that case are referring to two different pieces of data that you want to isolate. Okay. The brackets, though, are being used anytime you're actually going to perform work on pieces of data. I don't know if that makes sense. So the parentheses you have are basically isolating multiple chunks of data. You could have a bunch of commas in there with a bunch of pieces of data. And then the brackets will basically allow you to execute things on those pieces of data.
Okay. So for example, if there were numbers and I wanted to plug them into an equation, but there's a long, like big data set and I wanted to loop through each one, I would put a bracket so that we could use that for calculations.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Awesome. Great question. Any other questions? Okay, sweet. Well then, let me go ahead and share my screen. And we will look at a couple of examples here. All right. Loops in Python. So the concepts that you are about to learn about loops are pretty much the same across the board, okay? I have not seen a programming language that does not have some type of a while loop. And I also haven't seen a programming language that does not have some type of a for loop. Now, they do different things, and they're good in different situations, but they both are the same in the fact that they allow us to execute the same statements of code multiple times. The way a while loop works, so we have a nice conditional diagram. Now, this shows every possible outcome of a while loop running. Okay, so we have our while loop and we have our condition right here. Now, our conditions for while loops are very similar to if-else statements. That they will always equate to true or false. They will be Boolean expressions. If it is true, so if our while loop condition equates to true, then it will execute the statements inside the loop and then go back to the condition. Okay, and this will keep on happening for as long as this condition is true. As soon as it's false, we come down here and we exit the loop. Okay, pretty straightforward. A for loop, for each item in a sequence, it will check to see if the last item has been reached. Okay, so our while loop, we just have a conditional expression, a Boolean expression. A for loop, we're going to check to see if if we're still basically in the range that we want to be in. If the last item has not been reached, then we're going to execute all of the lines of code inside the body of the for loop, and then we'll go back and then we'll check, be like, okay, is the last item, has it been reached? If not, then we'll keep on going and executing that. As soon as we've reached the last item, then we'll say, yes, it's been reached, and we'll go ahead and exit the loop. Okay, so let's talk practicality for a sec. When would I want to use a while loop, and when would I want to use a for loop? What are your thoughts? Matthew, go ahead.
I think like a for loop would be good for a sequence of numbers that you want to do functions with, or some kind of, I guess, function. And then a while loop, on the other hand, could be a little more like having to do with processes. Like if a certain process is true, like we want to keep it going until it's false. So I'm just thinking like numbers and sequence for loops and while for processes, but they're almost interchangeable.
Yeah, it's interesting because if I tried really hard, I could probably make it so that I could only use one of those for the rest of my life. It would be more effort, but I cannot think of a situation that I could not use either if I really wanted to make it work. Now, with that said, things are way easier with one or the other. Okay, Matthew said something really important. Anytime I'm working with numbers, if I have a counting loop, I'm like, okay, I want to loop 100 times and do something 100 times, and I know how many times I'm going to run something. Which one would be easiest to use? A for. You were muted, but yes, a for. Okay. If I have anything that is conditional on a variable changing or some other condition being met, and I don't know when it's going to happen, it would be easier to do with a for loop. Much easier to do with with a while loop. Much easier to do with a while loop. Here's why. Let's say I have a program that prompts the user for I'm asking about their favorite pie. Okay, and I say, please enter your favorite pie. Because I'm putting together like a list of pies that people might like. Okay. And then I also have a condition in there. I say, okay, as soon as you're done entering pies, just say you're done. Okay. Now the way that might look in code is I have a while loop, and I say while I could have a Boolean called user is not finished. While that is equal to true, then I have an input function, and I say, please enter your favorite pie. Okay. And then as soon as they type in the letter N or something, then I would assign user is not finished to or user is finished to false or to true, and then we could jump out of that loop. Okay. And so anytime we're dealing with user input or other things that we can't count. All right. So one example, let's say I'm trying to find like the sixth factor of 200. Okay. Without a little bit of thought, I have no idea what the sixth factor of 200 would be. Okay. And so I don't know if I need to loop 3 times or 10 times or 6 times. I don't know. And so I could just have a Boolean expression that says, okay, while factors is less than 5 or less than 6, we'll keep on going. Okay. And then we'll keep on finding those factors. And then once we found our sixth factor, we'll go ahead and assign that bool to true or to false to get us out of that loop. Okay, so anytime we're counting, use a for loop. Anytime it's based on anything else, use a while loop. Okay, and like I said, you could probably make it work other ways as well, but that's the easiest way to make it work. All right, while loop versus for loop. So this one, we have a while loop, keep looping as long as the number is less than or equal to 5. While number is less than or equal to 5, we'll print the number, update the number to be 1 more than it was. This is a really important step. Has anyone written a loop where they didn't modify the number in a situation like this? Nathan, I see you nodding your head. Do you remember what happened when you did that?
It will loop infinitely until it workstation you're working on says, hey, you made a mistake and we're stopping this now.
Yeah. So our computers have limited resources. Okay. And if I have a loop that's going to loop 1 billion times, guess what part of my computer that's going to use up? My RAM. Gavin, I saw you say it. You're on mute too. But yes, it's going to start filling up my RAM. All right. Now, some programs are smart enough to be like, okay, this program's getting a little bit intense. Let's go ahead and stop it. Like Nathan said, let's throw an error, make it stop. Some of them aren't smart enough, and it could crash the program, and it could even crash your computer. Okay. So that doesn't happen very often anymore, especially with VS Code out. You know, I've never seen that happen with VS Code, but it is possible. And if there weren't checks in place and you run an infinite loop and it just goes and goes and goes, it's only a matter of time before that 16 gigs of RAM that you have on your computer, or 4 or whatever you have, is gone. And your computer's not going to be able to function. Okay, so this line of code down here, number, am I not sharing? I am sharing. Okay, good. Okay, I was worried for a sec. So this line of code, number equals number plus 1, is crucial. Okay, because that is what prevents our infinite loop. Otherwise, number would always be equal to 1. 1 would always be less than or equal to 5, and this while loop would continue until something on your computer broke. All right, print finished with the loop. The next one, for item in John, Jack, John, Jane, Jack, and Jim. I can read. Okay, and here are some brackets. Okay, Matthew, you were talking about those a little bit ago. We can print item. Now, what this is going to do, we now have a list right here, right? In this case, we have a list of strings. It could be a list of anything. I could have a list of integers or floating point numbers, or even dictionaries. Okay, I could have a list of all sorts of different types of variables. In this case, I have a list of strings, and I have a nice for loop that says for every item inside of my loop. Now I can name item whatever I want. I'm declaring a variable right here. This is a variable name that I can then use inside of the loop. If I tried to print item outside of the loop, what would happen?
It would print the first variable in the list.
Okay, yeah, it would not do what I want it to do. Okay, so this data will continue to modify as we go through this loop. So we have John, Jane, Jack, and Jim, and for every single item in it, it'll go ahead and just print that. Okay. Now, there are lots of different ways that you can work with for loops. Here's one example of using our in operator, where I can say in a list or in a set or in a dictionary, and I can loop through different data structures using our in operator. All right, bad practice versus good practice. This code does not define a value for number before it is used. Okay, well, number is less than 10. We have to be able to declare that first. Okay. Good example. This code correctly sets the variable to a value before it's used, and then we can actually use it the way that we would expect. Down here, this code sets the variable to a number that prevents the code from ever entering the loop. Number 25 is always going to be greater than 10. So this loop will actually never happen. Would this throw an error when I try to run my Python program? No, for better or worse, right? It wouldn't like crash my program. Sometimes it's nice when that happens, because then it's like, oh, there's an error on line 17 or something. This would not happen. This is what we call a logical error, not a syntax error, okay, or a runtime error. This is just a logic error, and it's my own mistake. Okay, I'm in number 25, and the loop will never run because 25 is always greater than 10. Good example, obviously 0 is less than 10, and we'll be able to loop through this thing. Ooh, let's look at this though. This bottom right example, what's wrong with this one? If anything. Do we have something where we modify our number variable? Yes. It's not like our last example where we just said number equals number plus 1, okay, because we're not counting. This time, the user is going to have to input every single time, and so we probably wouldn't hit 1 billion runs with this loop. Okay, sweet. Let's keep going. Variable scope. Bad practice. This code uses the variable name outside the loop where it was declared. Okay, name is declared right here inside of our while loop, and then it would try to print it. Good practice, if I want it accessible outside of the loop after it was declared inside of the loop, I have to declare it first, which isn't that big of a deal. It's just one extra line of code, and then I could access it inside or outside of the loop. Okay. All right, installing Python stuff. Has anyone, do you guys have pip installed? Good. Does anybody not have it installed? Don't be embarrassed, it's okay. I just went through a whole class this morning helping people install pip. So I'm like well-versed in it right now on all operating systems.
I haven't installed it yet.
Okay, so go ahead and try to install this. There are several different issues that could arise if it's not working. So go ahead and try to install it. And if you have any issues, just post them in the chat here in Zoom after you try to work through it, okay? These slides, let me just share this link so that you can access these slides. All right. Chat. What does pip do? What does pip do?
Doesn't it like download the library onto your computer and install it?
Yes, yes it does. So remember, we have talked about a bunch of different modules in this class, right? We've talked about math and random and CSV and date time. Everything I just said, those 4 modules are all built into Python. So when you go and you download Python at the beginning of a semester and install it on your computer, somewhere in those files is the code for those different modules, which is why we can be in our programs just say import math, and math is there. We can use square root, we can use pi, those things are there. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of libraries and what is called PyPy, the Python package index. Okay, the Python package index has hundreds of thousands of packages, many of them with just one module, many of them with many modules, and all of them are public and anyone can use them. Okay, pip, what pip will do is it'll go into that Python index and it will find modules and basically download them onto your computer and just place them right alongside where the code is for math and CSV and date time and those other modules that were there when you installed Python. So then when you want to use a module, you can go ahead and just say pip install module name, whatever module it is that you want to install, and it'll install it on your computer. And then if you want to use it in a Python program, you just have to say import whatever new module it is because you already installed it. Okay, so pip is great for working with third-party modules. Okay, and I say third-party because they're not developed by Python necessarily, but they could be developed by anyone. I could make a module if I wanted to and upload it to the Python index or the Python package index, and then you guys could download it if you wanted to and install it and put it alongside the rest of your modules in your computer. Let me show you guys an example of what this looks like. So real quick, who knows what HTTP is? Has anyone heard of HTTP? Does that sound familiar at all?
Yeah.
Yeah? HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Now, I have no idea what those words mean. I know what HTTP means, okay? But that's what it stands for. But basically, anytime you do anything on the internet, you are sending and receiving HTTP requests like crazy. So if I go to google.com and I hit enter, what just happened in that like half a second that it took for me to hit enter and see the Google page here was I sent an HTTP GET request. Okay, there are a few different types of HTTP requests. One of them is called GET. All right, and when I sent this request, it went and found a server and was like, okay, here's Google stuff, because I wanted information from google.com, which is basically a computer running somewhere that says, okay, if someone says they want to see google.com, here's the code we're going to show them. They returned all this code to my computer, and then my browser's like, sweet, I have code, let's go ahead and load it into the page. There are lots of times when this doesn't work. You know, we've all seen pages not load properly in Google Chrome or in any browser. But this, like with BYUI over the last day and a half, okay, this is, that is a very simple example of an HTTP request. Let's look at another one. I'm going to send an HTTP GET request to Google searching for movie API. Now, you will hear the term API a lot of the time, and it basically refers to a database that has access points that allow you to retrieve data. Now, I'm a big fan of movies. And this is the Open Movie Database. They say it's open. It used to be really open. Now you actually have to pay a little bit, I think. It's based on usage, you know, so if you make more than like 100 requests a day or something, you have to start paying. But here's what happens. So there is a URL right here, HTTP, look at that. Holy cow, this is what we're talking about. www.omdbapi.com. Okay, so that's the URL, and that's where I am right now. Okay, that's what website I'm on. But then it says, if I put into this URL a slash and a question mark, and then I say API key, which is basically a variable, equals some number that I pay for, okay? And I could put all sorts of other stuff in here. Actor is Harrison Ford, or title is Avengers, or anything. It can search for it. So I can come down here, and I can see what kind of parameters this HTTP service accepts. Okay, we have a parameter I, which is a description, a valid IMDb ID. Okay, so it's an ID. We have T, which is a movie title, type, movie series or episode, Y, year of release. So check this out. Let's come into here. Notice this and. Okay, so what this would look like if I was going to write something like this, I'm just going to open up a new thing over here, right there. Okay, I have this URL. My key might look something like this. All right, whatever number they gave me after I made an account. And then T equals Avengers. Okay, because it said T is the title. And then I could also say and year. What was year? Let's go back there and see what the parameter was. Y, that makes sense, year of release. Okay, and I'll say Y equals 2019. All right, and I could search for this. Now, without a valid key, this will not work, okay? It'll give me some error saying, okay, invalid API key, because this is not a valid key. So it's like, I'm not going to give you any data, that you didn't pay for that. But down here, we can go ahead and play around with this a little bit. So I'm going to say Avengers 2019. Look how they put this request into a nice graphical user interface. We've got some nice inputs here. Anyone could do this, okay? Most of our users, they might not know how to construct a request string like this, but pretty much everyone can type in a title of a movie and search for it, okay? And then it comes back, no response. What? Let's try this. Just Avengers. Okay, so we got one of 2012, The Avengers. It's pretty specific. Wonder if I put Avengers Endgame. There's the one that I wanted. Okay, so the way it's searching, it's looking for like an exact string. It looks like it didn't worry about the word the, but that was an HTTP call. I said, hey, I want this data, and here's how I'm going to search for it. And then it came back with a title, a year, what it's rated, release date, runtime, genre, director, a whole bunch of stuff, right? Now, wouldn't it be cool if I could do something like this in Python, right? We have a nice web page right here. If I wanted to make a website doing this, I totally could, but I can also do it using Python. Okay, so let's try something real quick. Let me pull up something. Let's see here. Any questions up to this point about anything we're talking about? All right, so we're going to write a little bit of code. First, I want to make sure. So I downloaded an extension in VS Code called pip packages. It's just a way to help me work with pip. But in here, I'm going to go. Let's see, we're in 110. So I'm going to say open in terminal, and I'm going to install a module called requests. I'm going to say pip install requests. Okay, and if pip is installed properly on my computer, then this should just run. Let's see, pip is being invoked. Requirement already satisfied. So it looks like I already installed requests at some point on my computer, which is just fine. Okay. Now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and say, let me zoom out a little bit. I cannot see anything. All right, I'm going to make a new file, and I will just call this temp requests.py. Okay. Now in here, I want to actually make a request. So what I'm going to do is, since I installed it with pip, right now it basically is going to seem just as simple as like importing something like math. But this time the module that I want to import is called requests. And notice that VS Code recognized that it is present. Okay, as soon as I start typing M here, it shows me all of my modules that start with M that I could import. Okay, and now since I used pip to install requests, I can import requests into this file. Import requests, and I'm going to say r equals requests dot get. Now here I actually need a piece of data that I want to retrieve. So for our example, we're going to do, I'm just going to say beautiful sunset, and we'll find a nice picture. Ooh, that's nice. Okay, and I'm just going to right click on this guy and hit copy image address. Now, if I put this into another tab, you can see it's actually a JPEG file. Again, I'm doing a get. I'm requesting from Shutterstock that it return this image to me, and it does. So now I'm going to try to do that in my Python program. Come over here. I'm just pasting that image address in here, and let's see if that works up to this point. I'm just going to try to print R. Let's see what happens. So I'm in the right directory. I'm just going to say py temp requests. I just hit tab to complete that. And response 200. That is an HTTP response. 200 means successful. Okay. And you could Google those. There are a bunch of them. HTTP response codes. And you could look at them, but 200 is a good thing. Okay. Anything else, it means there's something else kind of going on, but 200 is a successful response. All right, so let's come back over here. That isn't quite the data that we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say with open, and then I'm going to say a path that I want to save this thing at. So I have this cse110 folder. I'm just going to copy the path, and I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, cse110 or C drive get cse110, and I will just call this sunset.jpg. Okay. WB, this might be an optional parameter here, but I'm basically just saying, you know, what type of data I'm bringing in here. And I'm just going to say as f, and then I'll say f.writer r.content. Okay. And what this will do is it will actually write the data that was received from this GET request, and it will write it into this file in this location. Okay, let's try it. If this works, I should see a sunset.jpg pop up over here. Let's see if it works. We don't have to print that anymore. Okay, up arrow and enter. That's interesting. It gave me an attribute error, but I still see sunset.jpg. Interesting. I'll have to look into why that didn't work out for us. But anyways, so you can see just with that process, okay, so I used pip. After I had pip on my computer, I used pip to install requests, and then I can use requests, and there are a bunch of them, okay? If you wanted to Google just the Python package index, you could basically see everything that is there, and there's a crazy amount of stuff here, okay? Okay, any questions up to this point? Okay, sweet. Well then, let's see. Would you guys rather go into breakout rooms and do an activity, or would you rather do a Kahoot?
Kahoot.
Okay, well, I heard two people say Kahoot and no one saying they wanted a program. So let's do a Kahoot. All right, let me paste the link in here. Hey, Felipe Fajeda came just in time for a game. All right, let me move this over here. Wow, that is not what I wanted to move over here. Let's move this guy over here. All righty. Hey, Felipe, welcome.
Thank you, Brother Bush. Sorry for being not a little, but a lot late. I was trying to figure out how to log into Canvas,
yeah, Canvas is it's been a bit of a doozy the last 36 hours.
Yeah, but now it's working. Like ended up working, for me. So I was able to get the info I needed to. And
awesome.
I send what I did and the steps that I took to log into Slack. So if any students have any trouble, they should try that. So
awesome. Felipe, if you want to play, you can totally play.
Good.
All right, let's see. We have 14 people in here. Got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It's pretty close. If anyone else is still trying to join, you can still join while we're going through questions. All right, let's do this. You have a list of book titles and want to print out each one. What type of loop is best? Okay, any thoughts on this? What do you guys think? Anyone brave enough to say that they picked neither? And what your thought was there?
So it was like totally a misclick.
Okay, no worries. How about the 3 while loop folks? Is there a reason why you'd prefer to do while instead of a for loop, trying to print out every title in a list? Okay, how about the for loop folks? Why would you guys choose a for loop?
Because it's easier that way.
It is easier that way. When we use the in operator, it makes it really easy. If I have a variable called books, I can just say for title in books or something, and it'll just loop through all of them for me, and it'll make it really easy. But like we said earlier, you could totally use a while loop if you wanted to. Neither, yeah, I'm glad that was a misclick. Okay, let's see. Okay, next one. The user will enter the names of each of their children. Which type of loop is best? Okay, wow, pretty even spread there. Who wants to talk about their choice and why they chose it.
Well, I chose the while loop because you can either prompt the user for the number of children they have first and be like, while the input is not equal to this amount of kids, then keep going. Or you could just keep looping until they click enter or something like that. Like, don't type anything.
Yeah, great. Okay. Anyone with the for loop? Tell me how you do it. Find the user to type in the names of their children. How would you use a for loop? So in this case, I agree that a while loop would be best, okay? Because you don't have to worry about trying to count or anything. A for loop, if I was gonna be forced to do a for loop with this, I'd probably say like for range in 50, okay? I've never met someone with 50 kids, okay? Maybe even 100, just to be safe, okay? And so it could potentially loop that many times, but I would still give them an option to be done. You know, so Brandon was like, I'll let them like hit enter or something to say that they're done they're done listing their kids. You know, it's really common in programs to see, you know, enter n when you're done or something like that. And so with a for loop, we could still do the same thing. Be like, enter the name of the child. If you don't have another child, enter n. And then you check, be like, okay, if n was hit, then we'll make some variable false, and then we'll stop doing our while loop. With the for loop to do that, I would have to set up a loop that I know will encapsulate every possible instance. Okay, so that's why I'm like, all right, if I loop 100 times for people talking about their kids, I know that I'm not going to get more than that. And then inside of that if statement, it's like, okay, if they hit n, then I would just put a break statement to get out of my loop. Now, that is not ideal at all. Okay, one, setting up a loop 100 times, that might or might not work out for me if someone's like messing with me like a QA guy and they're like, yeah, I have 103 kids and it broke. You know, that wouldn't be cool. But it would be possible. All right, next one. Given a birthday, you want to compute the current age. Which type of loop is best? Okay, who said that? Who's the one person that did that? Jason, let's hear it. What would you do instead? I think you're on mute. Jason, I think you're on mute.
So I honestly don't know what I would use, but I know I wouldn't use a loop, if that makes sense.
Okay, so who would use a loop? 7 of you said a for loop. Why would you use how would you use a for loop? What are your thoughts?
Actually, I kind of clicked the wrong one because I agree with Jason.
Okay.
I would have just taken the year and like subtracted it from the current year.
Simple subtraction, right? Yeah.
Instead of a loop.
Now, could we use a loop if we really wanted to? Could we? Yes. Yeah, I could totally be like, all right, I'm going to loop from 1980 to 2021 and see how many numbers are there. I could totally do that. That would be a lot of processing power and development effort to do that when I could just say current year minus 1980. Okay. So yeah, great. Anyone want to defend the while loop? Sorry if I stole your thunder just now.
This was a trick question. You said which type of loop is best. You didn't say neither.
I'm sorry, man. I guess I'm out to get you.
You tricked everyone.
At least I'm not giving you guys tests in this class, right? We don't have any tests. This is as close to a test as you get, and it's not even graded. All right. So I taught an intro to programming class a couple of semesters, like a year and a half ago. It was cse110. That class, man, we had exams in that class, and it was like 4 exams and like 50 multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank exams for every single one. Those things were brutal. They were so brutal. It'd have like 10 lines of code and be like, what's the output going to be? And it's like, it's an error. There was like a missing comma or something. Like it was
That was
awful.
so hard. The final for
Yeah.
CS1
I know. Yeah, it was brutal.
like the whole class is like okay-ish, but then you get to I failed the exam, but I passed the class.
I know. Yeah, I've taken my exams out of all of my programming classes because I'm like, dude, these. Yeah. Anyways, we'll stick with Kahoots. Kahoots are a good alternative. All right. You want to compute the square roots of the numbers 1 to 10,000. Which type of loop is best? All right, good job. No one picked neither. Yeah, that would have been like 10,000 lines of code if you had done neither. Okay. So seven people said a for loop. What are your thoughts? How would you do that with a for loop?
You'd loop it. You'd have a list of numbers from 1 to 10,000, and then you'd have a variable saying number squared. What's the square root of this number?
Yeah, let me show you guys a really, really, really simple example. Okay, Python's awesome. If I wanted to make a loop from 1 to 10,000, all I have to do is say for number in range. 1, 2, 3, that's 10,000. And that will loop for us 10,000 times. Okay, and I could do whatever math I wanted to here if I wanted to print it or add it to a total, anything. But that is all I have to do to loop 10,000 times. Really nice, okay? All right, could I do it with a while loop? Yes, actually I could do it pretty easily. Okay, I could just say, you know, while x is less than or equal to 10,000, do my math, and x plus equals 1. Okay, I could do that pretty easy with the while loop also. All right, sweet. 200, who's our success guy? Gal.
That's me.
Nice. All right, number 5. Your asteroids game needs to continue playing until the player dies. Which type of loop is best? Nice work. Okay, yellow and green, anyone want to talk about their choice?
I misclicked. That was my.
No worries. It's rough because it's like a race. But no, I'm glad. Okay, a while loop would definitely be best. You know, I could have a very simple condition that says while health is greater than 0, or while ship is not hit by a rock, or whatever the condition is on dying. I could just put that in my while loop and then keep looping. Okay. All right. Thor. I totally watched Thor last night, you guys. My wife and I are going through the MCU, including Agent Carter and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in order. We're pretty excited about it. Avengers is next. I'm excited about that too.
Have you seen
All right.
WandaVision yet?
Yes. Yes, I have. Just the first 3 episodes, and I'm really curious. All right. What is the result of the following code? All right. Ooh, 9 people thought it was 1 to 5. So one of the blue people, why'd you pick blue instead of green?
Because when you're doing a range, it does 1 less than that last number that you input.
Ah,
Because
great.
you start counting generally at 0.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, anytime we have like list or anything, we're talking about indices, we always start with 0, always. And it's the same thing with range. Great. Now, with this, it'd be really easy to test and really easy to see running it. It would only take a couple of seconds to write that code in and run it. So again, I would say anytime you're working with code, run it in small increments. Because if as soon as you write a loop, you run it and you're like, oh, that's 1 less number than I need, then you'll know that you need to adjust the loop before you write more code and have mistakes kind of build on that. So, all right. Nice work, guys. Next one. What is the result of the following code? All right. Who wants to share? What does it output?
It would output an error because that x plus 1 wasn't being assigned to anything, or it would be an infinite loop.
Interesting. Let's look at it. Look at that. Okay, so do we ever actually change x? So this would be a what type of a loop?
Infinite.
Never, an infinite loop. Yep, it will never end. Great. Okay. If this was x plus equals 1, what would be output?
Then it'd be 1 through 9.
1 through 9. Yep, same as last time with the range. Okay, because this while we got less than 10 here, so it'd be 1 through 9. Awesome. Okay, next one. It's a battle for first, you guys. What is the result of the following code? Wow, totally botched that one. Sorry, guys. Okay, any questions about this one? Why it was 1 through 9? If I wanted to display 1 through 10, how would I do it?
You put it in the while loop, like up top. Wouldn't you do that?
Less than or equals to 10.
Yep, I could either say x is less than or equal to 10 or x is less than 11. Great. All right. We got 5 minutes left. Let's do this. 2 left. Which of the following iterates through each letter in string named sentence? Okay, awesome, you guys. Any questions on this one? Sweet. Let's keep going. All right, last one. Every for loop could be turned into an equivalent while loop. Awesome. Okay. Is this the same the other way around? Could every while loop be equivalently converted into a for loop?
Yes.
So earlier I said that technically you could probably make it work. I don't know if I would call them equivalent. Me making a loop that will default to 100 times because I think kids won't have that many, or parents won't have that many kids. Okay, so I might be able to solve a problem with the while loop, but that doesn't mean that it would be equivalent or perform the same way or loop the same number of times. Every for loop, however, could be converted into a while loop and loop exactly the same number of times, perform just the same, but the same cannot be said the other way around. All right, our winners are okay. You guys, it's been fun. Any questions on anything that we've talked about? Okay. Well, if you guys don't have any questions, I will just stick around here and help people if anyone needs help with stuff. I know a couple of you didn't have pip installed on your computer. We could look at that if anyone's still struggling to get that installed. But if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and let you guys go. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.